second bright idea is analysis. Why? Good question, right? Why does anyone need to analyze anything? Well, let's check it out. In the Intermediate Workbook, Lesson 12, pages 132 to 139, students learn that analysis of a piece of music develops a deeper understanding of the composer's ideas and gives direction to the musician for how the piece should be performed. Now, I have a quick question for you, and I just want you to put the answer in the chat box here. When you are learning a piece, do you sight read the piece first and then say, all right, now let's kind of take a look at what we've done and analyze it? Or do you analyze the piece first and then do you sight read the piece? So sometimes there might be pros and cons for doing it either way. Which way do you do it? Analysis first or perform first, or I should say sight read first. So just throw that in the chat box. I'm just kind of curious because everyone learns different and we all teach a little differently as well, don't we? So here we have our analysis. And I think for myself, you know what, sometimes I do it both ways. Sometimes I like to analyze a piece of music and then do the sight reading. And other times I just want to play it. So I'll just kind of open my book and take a look at the music. So thanks for answering those questions. I appreciate your comments in the chat box here on our webinar today. Now, in the Intermediate Rudiments workbook, on pages 132 to 139, once students have completed this, they're now going to go on to melody writing and movements and elements. And we use this in the level 6, page 46, and this is after intermediate page 139. So after Intermediate Rudiments, page 139, now students will complete level 6, page 46. So let's see what SOLA says. SOLA says a melody may be written using 3 types of melodic movements. Conjunct, so the melody movement is by step. Disjunt, melody movement by skip or by leap. And stasis, which is actually Greek for standing still, so repetition of a note before movement in the melody. Now there's also, a melody also has 2 main elements, and they are, you with me? Melodic structure, right? The shape or the curve that creates that design, and rhythmic structure. And we're going to see how those are actually combined today. So let's do a quick exercise. I would like you to just write your answers in the chat box and let's see how quickly we can do our homework today. So now we're on level 6. We're on the answer page 46. So the melody movement for A, take a look at the music. The melody movement is it conjunct, disjunct, or stasis? And the answer is, write it in the chat box. I see some answers coming in. The melody is conjunct, right? Because we see it moving by step, ascending or descending. For B, the melody movement is, what is your answer here? I see it moving by leaps, right? And by skips. And so the answer is disjunct. And for C, the melody movement is, well, we see a lot of repeated notes there before moving on to the next. You might even recognize that little melody there, and that is stasis. Now, question 2 says, identify each of the following elements as melodic structure or rhythmic structure. So go ahead and write your answers in the chat box with me because it's nice to, engage in participation when we're on our webinar together. So what is the main element? So identify each of the following elements of music as melodic structure or rhythmic. So the main element is, we see there's movement of the melodic line, so that would be melodic structure. And of course, the second one, there's no movement at all, so this would simply be the rhythmic structure. So now we want to kind of see, well, how are we going to put that all together? So in level 6 on page 47, when students are doing melody writing in a parallel period and analysis, I just want to point out one more important thing. So take a look here at the Tito tip. just at the bottom of the page. So on the Tito tip, just to avoid confusion between a musical phrase, which is of course a slur, and an analysis phrase, which is written over an analyzed, that's hard to say, analyzed section of music, use the square analysis phrase mark. So that square analysis phrase mark, that's what we want to use when we're actually identifying whether it's an A or an A1 or whatever it is. Okay, so now in the level 6 on page 47, students are now going to complete this exercise. So here, they're going to draw an analysis phrase mark. So this is what I'm talking about. This is that square bracket rather than using a slur. Okay, so it just kind of keeps things neat and tidy, and that way they don't get confused. Very good. In level 6, we're going to check in now with Quinn and listen to why he thinks we need to analyze our music. So here's Quinn.
Okay, Quinn, so we've been talking about the parallel period. We learned about that in level 5. So why do we need to analyze our music anyway?
Well, because sometimes when you're playing music, it makes it, I guess, easier to play when you understand what you're playing, why you're playing it, and maybe where you're going next in the song.
Yeah, so we kind of have an idea as to, well, you know, it's interesting that you said that. It's kind of like a roadmap, isn't it? Yeah. You kind of need to know, like, where are we going before you just get in the car and hit the highway. So good answer there. Okay, so let's go ahead and play that first melody. So this is in parallel period. So you're just going to repeat measures 1 and 2 into 5 and 6 as you're playing it. So go ahead and play that for us, Quinn. Well done. So let's quickly answer the questions here. So when you had the first movement, the melodic movement in measures 1 and 2, and you repeated that into measures 5 and 6, was that conjunct, disjunct, or status?
That would be disjunct.
Right, because you can see it move by leap and by skip, right? And then what about the chord in measure 1? So go ahead and play that. Okay, so what is the root of that chord?
That's A major.
A major, very good. Okay, and you move that up into root position. So what about the second chord there? Can you go ahead and play all the notes in the second measure? Okay, so what chord is that?
That's E dominant 7th.
Dominant 7th, excellent. Okay, so we've got chord 1 and we've got chord 5. Okay, so now the next question says, the melodic structure in measures 3 and 4 and 7 and 8, are they the same? Are they similar? Or are they different?
They're different.
They're different because in measure 3, we're moving up, and that one would be considered conjunct, right? And then in the second last measure, we're just moving by step and skip. So then we're moving down, aren't we? So we have sort of 2 different things happening there. And then what about the cadence? So in phrase A, we see that we have a 4/5 cadence. So what is that called, a 4/5 cadence?
That's a half cadence.
Half cadence. Okay, and what about the 5/1 cadence? That's called a what?
5/1 is authentic.
Very good. Okay, thanks, Quinn. Great job.
The third bright idea is form. How do we identify it? That's a good one, isn't it? How do we identify form? In the Intermediate Rudiments Workbook, there are 12 accumulative review tests, one at the end of each lesson, including the final exam at the end of lesson 12. So in the Intermediate Rudiments Workbook on page 144 in the final exam, question number 10, students are asked to analyze this piece called Farewell, My Friends, composed by Sheila McKibben-Uren. Now, not only do students learn how to analyze the form, but they can also sight read this piece. They can write words, transpose it, have fun, exploring different ways of interpreting the music. I think you'll be surprised with what some students come up with, right? It's a lot of fun. Form. So the building block of binary form. Now, you're going to use this after Intermediate Rudiments, page 144. In level 6, right up here, okay, so in level 6 on page 52, Sola says, what is she saying? The building blocks of binary form create a specific design structure in composition. And so here we see our building blocks, the motive building blocks that can be repeated or varied, and of course our phrases. So a parallel period, the A ends with a half cadence and the A1 ends with authentic. And then our contrasting period, now we're going to have a new A that ends with the half cadence, and then of course the B that ends with the authentic cadence. And this creates our binary form. So binary form uses the building blocks of A, section A, and we use the capital, like an uppercase A for section A, and section B combined. So there's two main divisions with a strong cadence ending on the end of each section. Now here's Quinn with Farewell, My Friends on page 144 of the Intermediate Rudiments Workbook before moving on to the Level 6 Supplemental Workbook. So here's Quinn.
Well, it looks like Sola and Tito are saying farewell, my friends, right, Quinn? Yeah. Sometimes when you say bye to your friends, it takes a little while, doesn't it? You just, I just want to tell you one more thing, right?
Yeah, you just want to go back for like one last hug or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, we're just not quite ready yet. So this piece is called Farewell, My Friends, actually written by Sheila McKibben-Uren, the co-author of the supplemental series with me. And what do you notice? Do you think she was ready to say goodbye to her friends at the end, Quinn?
I don't think so.
Okay, tell me why. Do a little analysis here. How do you know she wasn't quite ready just to say goodbye immediately?
Because at the end of the piece, it says DSL fine, which means to go back to this sign and then go all the way until it says fine.
Ah, so she wasn't quite ready just to say bye.
Yeah, she wasn't ready to end it right there.
No, and so I think you should give Sola and Tito a little high five. They've been hanging with you all day today, Quinn.
Bye.
Bye.